we need to have data which has been obtained through scientific rigor that can then better inform the policies and the regulatory standards that we need in order to open up the hemp industry, and not restrict and not create barriers and hurdles and red tape around, if we are to really benefit and see true innovation from hemp.
Jamila La Malfa Donaldson is a PhD student at Aberystwyth University in Wales, UK. Specialising in testing, cultivating and processing industrial hemp, she tells us more about her work in therapeutic compounds and the role hemp could play in challenging cannabis stigmas. So, welcome to the Lobsterpot. I'm Dave Barton. Here's my co-founder from Thermidor, Jamie Bonthron.
Good afternoon.
How you doing? You okay?
Yeah, recovered from Berlin just about now, so we're onward and upward.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And today we have a very special guest from the University of Aberystwyth. We have Jamila La Malfa Donaldson. So welcome, Jamila. Tell us a little bit about yourself and the work you're doing. It's very interesting. So please enlighten us.
Yes, firstly, thank you, Jamie and Dave, for inviting me. And I just really appreciate the opportunity to share my work. So I'm Jamila, and I'm based at Aberystwyth University, where I have been working to complete my PhD in industrial hemp. So since 2018, on the back of the legalization of medical cannabis in the UK, I've had the opportunity to, for the first time here at the university, grow hemp, different varieties of hemp, and then sample those varieties, so the leaf and the flowers, throughout its growth, and then take those into the lab and use the method that I've developed to analyze these plant samples to find out exactly what's inside. And so we're interested in the cannabinoid profile and the flavonoid profile, two chemical compound types that are quite interesting and unique to cannabis. And I'm going through my data at the moment and looking to kind of build a picture of how these compounds change throughout the growth of the plant.
Very cool. So, what have you kind of uncovered? What's kind of been if you're looking at all of those different aspects of it, are you looking at more sort of therapeutic benefits from a sort of health perspective, or is it what? Yeah, again, I don't pretend to know anything about the sort of the science side of stuff. I think Jamie has more of an aptitude for that than me, but
if it is, it's just marginal. I think we're in the presence of
I know. Oh, absolutely. But what is it? I guess if you're trying to sort of prove or discover, what's the sort of once you've kind of dug into the data, you're finding different aspects of the plant at different points. Is it at different points in the actual growth cycle itself? And are you saying that the plant has different properties or different compounds at different stages of growth? Is that what you're trying to figure out?
Yeah. So. All of these things tie into my work. However, the scope is a little bit narrower in the work specifically I'm doing. But the PhD has come off the back of the increasing demand for therapeutic compounds, namely CBD, as well as some of the other major and minor cannabinoids. And what we'd like to do first is just see if hemp grows here in the UK, in Wales, and establish these varieties, see how they grow and what kind of yields they produce. And this kind of information would be helpful for farmers, so they kind of know what they're getting into. And then what I've done is I'm taking one of those varieties that we grew out in the fields and taking it into more of a controlled environment indoors in a greenhouse, which will then allow me to sample more regularly throughout the growth. So then we can see how the change in chemical composition of the plant happens, which will then again give some insight into when to harvest, what's the most optimal time to harvest, and again, what kind of yields you can expect, particularly for the chemical compounds. And a lot of the work I've done is really just to set up things in the lab. It was the first time that we had hemp. It's the first time that we looked at CBD, and so we had to develop a lot of the analytical method to preparing the sample, and then setting up the liquid chromatography mass spectrometry machine in order to make sure that we can actually identify the compounds of interest and then quantify, so work out exactly what amounts of those are present in the original plant material.
Cool. I mean, it sounds pretty cutting edge in terms of like it hasn't necessarily been done before in the UK. Is that the case? UK sort of breaking new ground here, quite literally.
So there's growing research in hemp, which is great to see across the world. As we can imagine, given changes in legalization and regulations across the world, the UK is slightly behind in the kind of information that we have. And what I'm hoping my data will do would kind of plug the gap and give us some uniquely UK specific data on how hemp grows in this climate, in this environment, and quite literally answer the question, does it grow well here? Is it a feasible crop to be cultivated at an industrial scale by local farmers? And then demonstrate that there are many different raw materials that can come from the plant, so the seed and the fiber, but also the benefit of cultivating hemp, even for its therapeutic compounds that can create an added benefit for the UK population as a source of natural medicine, but also a added income stream for farmers who are looking to diversify as a means to be resilient in challenging times.
Absolutely. I mean, that's so I guess the big question for me is how well does it grow here, and how well does it grow on the western coast of Wales? Yeah,
so a lot of the varieties that we have available under the current hemp growing license, you can only grow EU-approved varieties of hemp, but these have historically been bred and used for fiber and seed production, which would be different if you was growing for cannabinoid production or for its therapeutic compounds. And so, whilst these seeds and these varieties can grow here in Wales, in the UK, with no problems and with very low kind of inputs, fertilizers, water, etc. What we do need is further breeding programs in order to create varieties that are better suited to our local climate, and also stabilize the chemical profiles that are produced by these varieties, so that we can have a more consistent source of a specific chemical composition, but also a reliable source of yields, and also looking at how we could possibly develop varieties that are multi-purpose, so can not only be grown for just fiber or just seed or just for flower production, but looking at ways where we can maximize the yields and outputs of the plant using various cultivation methods, whether that's indoor or outdoors in the fields.
Very cool.
It's really interesting to hear you speak about the kind of the impact of the research you're doing down the line. So the way I hear it is that it's that, you're unlocking the industry effectively by doing this sort of first step research specific to the UK. You're unlocking parts of the UK hemp industry that have potential, and then finding out that maybe parts of it don't potentially. That could be kind of the outcome of what you're looking into. What part do you think that research plays into industry and the success of industry? I don't know if you can speak to that a little bit.
Yes, well, there's a lot of information flying around about hemp, which is great. People are beginning to be better educated, informed about the benefits and the potential of hemp. But what we need is scientific rigor to actually provide us with the data to really back up those claims and help to inform us of the next steps and really get the foundation right for the industry. And it really starts with just understanding the plant itself. I'm hoping to demonstrate that you can have different chemical compositions throughout the growth of the plant, and so it may make sense to harvest at some earlier in the early stages, or the leaves are actually a very valuable source of compounds at certain stage of the growth. And so this information can feed through and onto a lot of processes that really we need optimized in order to make the most and be most efficient in our production and use of hemp. And then also helping to better inform policy, which is based off of scientific data and evidence, and not just figures that have been pulled from sources that aren't well referenced or are outdated or not suitable. Even the 0.2% limit on THC comes from a researcher in Canada many years ago, which was just an arbitrary number that they used to define the types of hemp that they had there, and is well documented by the researchers themselves. And so in our attempts to really make the most of this crop, and so that it can help us all, as well as our industries, we need to have data which has been obtained through scientific rigor that can then better inform the policies and the regulatory standards that we need in order to open up the hemp industry, and not restrict and not create barriers and hurdles and red tape around, if we are to really benefit and see true innovation from hemp.
Well, it's really interesting that you mentioned a sort of 0.2% THC limit, because that, I mean, from other people we spoke to, people sort of exporting into the UK or internationally, that seems to be a real sticking point for them. And it's interesting you say it was just a kind of arbitrary number that someone invented somewhere, because that's causing so many kind of supply chain issues. But I guess from the perspective of, UK farmers and thinking about the opportunity, I mean, obviously, like you say, data has a big role to play in kind of justifying, just how, impactful, how positive that, growing hemp could be. But do you feel like there's still a stigma around hemp in the same way there is around cannabis?
Yeah, I would say there is definitely a hesitation around the adoption of hemp at a wider scale.
It's like a cultural thing. I mean, because again, it's the same plant. We know that. Yes.
So sorry, and even that's really interesting that you say that, because even I've had to wrestle with whether I refer to hemp as hemp or as cannabis. I think the distinction can be useful in terms of explaining what the end objectives are for the plant. If it's being used industrially, then it's going to require certain cultivation methods in order to optimize for the seed, the fiber, which will be different to medicinal cultivation. So even for my own work, I kind of wrestle with using the word hemp or cannabis. I have to sometimes think about in conferences or even funding applications, should I mention hemp or should I just forego cannabis? And so these are the kind of things that we need to think about, unfortunately, that really essentially waste time, I guess. And I think that however, though, that hemp provides an incredible opportunity to fight that stigma and overcome it. I think it offers a lot of potential for people to relate to. Everyone's got to eat, everyone's got to house themselves, everyone's got to clothe themselves, and hemp can provide so many different solutions across several industries, which people can really relate to and can see firsthand what the benefits and the impact would be, bringing hemp more into our day-to-day and how we solve our problems. I think hemp and cannabis really offers an opportunity for us to challenge the way that we are doing things and how we engage with our environment, how we obtain raw materials, how we manage our food systems, and like I said, our housing and building materials and such. So I think there can be a hesitation towards something that can be so disruptive. However, I've spoken to many people here in Wales who are very, very supportive of hemp cultivation. There are farmers who are just looking around, waiting for the first movers to have a go, and they're really keen to also get stuck in. But they have to be supported, and they have to have things in place to make it easier for them, instead of so many different hurdles and obstacles that they have to jump, and the burdens being put on them, instead of having support in place, whether especially even from research institutions, to give them the information they need to make the most of the plant.
It's I think what you said there about having to forego potentially using the word cannabis, it's almost a question of messaging and making it accessible for people. You're talking about the headline benefits, be it clothing or food or housing, things that people can attach themselves with very easily and can understand and can grapple with and think, oh, this is more than just cannabis. It's its own thing, and it has its own applications. And I think what you're doing from a research perspective is developing the fundamental underpinning knowledge of the plant that helps inform policy and legislative decisions. And then it's about how people in general talk about the plant and how they get that message across and how they get that information across. I think there's real parallels there. You spoke to some of the benefits of hemp. Are there any particular uses that you've heard of or that you know of that you think are particularly exciting?
I like to read anything that I can get my hands on about cannabis. And so, like bedtime reading for me is just catching up with the most recently published papers, be it for certain conditions that cannabis compounds are found to potentially have a benefit for and be included in treatment. I think one of the, I get a lot of feedback on some of the information that I do share on social media, and I've gotten a lot of interest in the use of CBD as a means to improve the shelf life of strawberries. So some researchers added CBD isolate into MCT oil, and they sprayed it or dipped strawberries into the formulation, and they were able to show that CBD maintained the redness of the strawberries and also decreased the microbial growth on the strawberries than without CBD. And I have a background in chemical engineering, and my master's research project was in looking for other formulations to replace sulfites as a means to preserve food. And so that really interested me as well. It may not be the most, cost-effective way to preserve our produce, but I think it really resonated with people, the potential to utilize something that is naturally derived in order to extend the shelf life of food and minimize waste. And I thought that was quite unexpected use for a plant compound. But there are so many different others, and I'm always searching for innovative uses of the hemp plant, which hopefully we can all work together to bring to the wider public.
That's fascinating. That's really, really interesting. Because again, I guess you're thinking about, ways to preserve that are organic that may be more expensive, if we have to rely on kind of a extraction. But I mean, no, that's really cool. So I'm going to say, you mentioned your sort of background in chemical engineering. What led you to cannabis as a sector? What sort of fired your interest in it?
Yes, well, I guess I'm very culturally aware of cannabis. I mean, I grew up in Southeast London. My dad's Jamaican, my mom's Italian. Cannabis is very much part of rustic kind of culture in the community. However, it wasn't until I actually met my now husband who introduced me to hemp and its other forms. So he was just busy ordering himself some hemp protein powder after a gym session. He's like, I'm out, got to get some more. And I said, why? And he's like, oh, well, it's gluten-free and it's it's a plant-based source of very, very digestible protein. And when I then looked into hemp myself and saw there's so many different uses for just one incredible plant, I got really, really excited as someone who is really interested in processing. And like you reiterated, I have a background in chemical engineering, but I was never interested in getting into the oil and gas industry, which is very common for chemical engineering. It's kind of the more traditional route. And so I was always keen to find opportunities in more environmentally friendly sectors. I had an interest in wastewater treatment and, like I mentioned, in food formulation. But I was also keen to get into hemp when I first found out about it, and had ambitions. I straight away wanted to like find some land and start growing it, but that wasn't accessible at the time. And it was just a few years later, after just using products myself and at home and benefiting from them, that we then found the PhD advertised online, and I just called it. I was like, "This is me." It fit all of my interests and my background, and I applied and I got in. And it's a lot easier to apply for a PhD than to do one. So I'm very happy.
And having applied for one, I know that it's pretty tough to actually apply for one. So.
No, I applied. It felt like my last chance.
Really?
Having had my first child and trying to think about what to do next. I'd applied for so many PhDs before that, and I thought, right, this is my last go. And I was just delighted to have the opportunity. It's been great. I've loved every minute of it, all the ups and downs, and it's been an incredible experience. I was a bit disappointed when first hearing at the beginning that it wouldn't be likely that we'd obtain licenses, but I'm very, very fortunate that we've been able to get not only a hemp growing license, but a full controlled drugs license, which enabled me to cultivate the same hemp that I did out in the field indoors as well. And so I've gained so many incredible laboratory skills, research skills. I've had the opportunity to speak about my research. I actually won the university's 3-minute thesis competition. So for me, it just really demonstrates how there is such an opportunity, particularly for STEM graduates in the space. And I hope that at least my journey will kind of begin to carve a path towards that. As I do know there are a lot of people around the world who are very, very interested in getting involved in different aspects of hemp research, not just the sciences. And I really hope that there'll be a lot more opportunities, particularly for an industry that really claims to support science and innovation in the space. We really, really need to support talent and the expertise that we do have. And so it's been great. It really has been a really incredible opportunity.
That's I think you've done a great job of summing it up. I suspect there's another lot of story within that as to how it's all kind of panned out over the past couple of years. And you mentioned you're still doing your PhD at the moment. Whereabouts are you with it at the moment, and how long do you have left, and what's the kind of final steps for you?
Yeah, so there's not long left. The thesis has got to be submitted ideally by the end of the year. There's obviously been delays, particularly with COVID and just issues with machinery in the lab. But I've been saying for a few months now, I need to get out of the lab. I'm nearly done. I am nearly done. Just need to plug some gaps in my data, which I've begun to kind of put together and start to see if I can pull out any trends or results that I can discuss. And then, so the next few months, I'm going to lock myself away and just focus on writing up and just doing the best I can. So this is probably the most daunting part of the process. So it has been a little bit stressful, but I'm keen to kind of experience this and take it as a kind of cathartic exercise where I get a chance to basically share everything that I've learned over these years, and the work that I've done as well, which I hope will spur on more research in this space, because there's so much to be done. I wish I had another 3 or 4 years to do what I'm doing, but I've got to stop now. I was going to say, what's kind of next for you? What kind of areas of are you hoping to continue in the industry and find more pathways forward and continue research? Are there kind of postdoctoral opportunities in this, or what's next? Do you think? I'm continuing. I'm looking for any opportunities that I can, be that in research or in industry. I'm looking for that all-elusive funding. And again, it just ties back to what we were saying earlier. I have seen stipulations in kind of funding eligibility that you can't apply for industrial hemp funding if it's for medicinal use, for example. which would limit the work around cannabinoid research. So I have seen that in one, but otherwise, again, it is about messaging and trying to spin it in a way which demonstrates the benefits of the use of funding, to the local, to the UK. And so, yeah, I'm looking, and I'm trying to connect with anyone who would be interested in what I'm doing and the skills and that I can offer the space. And I've also just registered my own business.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm looking to just kind of develop that.
Tell us. Is it Pro Hempotic? Is that right?
Yeah. So it's just something I came up with because I wanted to take the opportunity to develop my business acumen. I think that's really important when entering the kind of cannabis space. And so I spent a lot of time getting ready for a business competition. It's kind of like a Dragon's Den style competition here at the university that they have every year, open to students and graduates. And so I really thought about a business idea that I know I could implement, but then had a lot of potential. And so I just pitched a hemp food brand, and I was very fortunate to win. And so I've received funding and additional support to develop a hemp food brand. I'll be working with the Innovation Centre here to begin some recipe development, just to get some ideas going. And we'll be looking to start producing hemp foods that hopefully I can bring to you soon.
Yeah, cool. What kind of foods are you kind of producing? Is it kind of seed-based, or is it more kind of plant-based, or kind of mixture of stuff?
It's been very intentional for me to stick with the seed. I didn't want to I couldn't really overcome some of the challenges around CBD, for example, around novel food. And so I wanted to embark on a business that was a bit more accessible, and like I said, something that I could get going. And I think the hemp seed has so much potential that, again, has opportunities for innovation and to just do something really cool and interesting, using a food source that can be locally grown and sustainably grown right here in the UK. So I'm really excited to see where it goes. I'm still a bit taken aback by it all, but yeah, I'm just having fun with that and seeing how that goes.
Well, I'd be really interested to know what your strike rate generally is, because you apply for the PhD, you get in, you do the 3-minute thesis, you win that, you apply for the business, you win Dragon's Den style competition. Sounds like a very good strike rate. A lot of
it's never happened like that before, but no, I think I've definitely grown in confidence, and I feel so passionately and strongly about the potential of hemp that I just look for any opportunity I can to share the message, to draw attention and fund whatever resources we can to put into this plant, so that we can get more seeds in the ground and more people can benefit from it. And so half the battle is just the whole battle is just applying. A lot of people just don't. I've had people that say, I thought about entering the competition and they didn't, and that's fine. But I've had to work a lot personally to get over a lot of limiting beliefs for me to even begin to apply. And it's something that I'm still working on, and I'm just so grateful for the opportunity that I have, and I really do with a view to uplift the whole industry.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, it sounds like you're onto something, that's for sure, and that your research is obviously having an impact. So that's brilliant, which is fantastic. I'll say, in terms of, what would you like to see happen from a kind of, I'll put you on the spot a little bit, sort of government perspective to make things easier? What do you think needs to happen for more farmers to kind of adopt it? To, other than the kind of, obviously there's a knowledge gap potentially. What will make it easier from a kind of, I guess, regulatory perspective?
I think there's a lot more people that are more qualified than me to discuss these things, but just from a very, I like to simplify things, and I think that it is just as simple as treating it as an agricultural crop. It just seems strange to regulate a biological entity with its own thing. It's just going to do what it's going to do, and to impose so many restrictions on it is just creating so many barriers for farmers. But I think opening it up, incentivizing the cultivation of hemp, just like you would do with any other valuable agricultural crop, and then maybe I think testing. I'm obviously very, very. I think testing is incredibly important for someone who's developed testing methods for hemp, and is a big believer in transparency throughout the supply chain for everyone, but particularly end consumers. Testing is incredibly important, but it's also expensive. It takes a lot of time. I can tell you that now from all the samples I've done. And so I'd like to think that academia and research institutions can really step in and plug the gap and offer the valuable data and doing that work instead of farmers and producers, and taking the burden off of them. That can still inform policy that can benefit everyone. So yeah, I think a lot of calls that a lot of leaders in the industry are making are very valid. Increasing the THC content to 1% would allow a better yield of cannabinoids. The stuff I'm growing, it's not got much in it to begin with, which then means that you will need more of the biomass to process in order to get the kind of yield you need to create products. And so, yeah, just making it easier for farmers, more transparency and more collaboration between everyone in the space. And I hope that we can just get more ears in government in order to affect change in policy. So yeah, lots of work to do, but it can be done. And yes, definitely simplifying things and making it easier will help. And this, stigma, I don't know if we'll ever get rid of it, but I think the importance of addressing climate change is ever so present. So it's becoming a bit of a no-brainer, if you ask me. I mean, for me anyway. But yeah, hopefully through education and important conversations, we can open up access to this plant.
Very good. Cool. No, I think that's brilliant. Thank you. I think that's a great note to end on. So thank you so much for your time, Jamila. Really appreciate it. And best of luck to you as you move your research forward. And it's been fascinating. So thank you. Yeah,
thank you so much, Dave. Thank you, Jamie. All the best with what you're doing. Incredibly insightful. Thank you so much.